Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 152 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. Today is December 18th, 2023. Got my team, my crew with me. Guys, starting with Bill Sutton, Director of Services here at XenTegra. Bill, can you believe 2024 is over?
No, I can't.
You got your Christmas shopping done. Maybe I should start there.
Yeah, most of it except for the stockings.
Now, your wife, your team has that done, or you have it done?
I have it done. Well, the Christmas shopping for my wife was it was gifts for the family. We all got new iPhones. So,
Okay.
Of course, the funny thing is it was a very inexpensive gift because of all the promotions. I end up paying less per month now than I did before, believe it or not. So,
it is
I'm getting other stuff, and it's all done. I'm just waiting for Amazon to show up with all the packages.
Yeah. Well, that definitely makes Christmas easier. I don't know if it's less fun, more fun. I don't know. You get what people want, maybe, right?
Yeah, my daughter just texted me literally 5 minutes ago and said, "Do you want to go out and get stocking stuffers for mom?" And I'm all over that. Let her help me pick stuff out, So
You do have to deal with the crowd, though. Keep that in mind.
yes, for sure.
Geremy Meyers, how about yourself? You ready for the holiday?
I started shopping at 5:30 afternoon yesterday. So
Oh, you're early.
I would say I'm early. I would also say I know what I'm getting into. I do this every year, actually. So my wife usually does most of it, and then I fill in the gaps. And I started filling in those gaps yesterday. So we'll see.
I may be a glutton for punishment, but I'm going to the local shopping center after my wife leaves town to go to where we're going for the holidays a couple days early. And I like it, and I think it's appropriate. I'll buy it. If she wants to bring it back, I'll get a gift receipt. Just how it's going to be.
You know what? Call me old school, but at least once a year, I do like to make the trip out with the masses into the shopping, just to be a part of it. I'll be honest. And then after I'm done, I'm like, why don't I do that? I won't do it next year. But what do I do next year? All over again. Get my coffee, do the thing.
Todd, can you get Amazon up in a cabin in Maine?
Yeah, they actually do deliver. They do deliver to a house that's not lived in. I can prove that out. It wasn't my gift. It was someone else who lives up in the area had a 350-pound box dropped off right in front of my garage door. So yeah, it was yes, Amazon does deliver pretty much everywhere.
How'd you handle that? Throw it on the tractor and haul it off to them?
No, I pinged out on the local community Facebook page and I said, "Hey, does anyone know who would be getting this?" And I got like one person responded back and said, "Yep, that's mine. It got dropped off. We'll come over and pick it up." So
yes, one way to meet.
That was it.
That's funny.
All right, let me do the XenTegra commercial. If you are or looking at becoming a Citrix customer, a NetScaler customer, a ShareFile customer, and you do not feel like your partner is adding value the way they should, well, that's why we exist. We're 12 years old now. It's been the model from day one, whether it's Citrix, ServiceNow, Salesforce. I can go on and on with vendors that we can help up-level your partnership with. Let us know. Reach out to myself on LinkedIn. Let's talk about it. I know the opportunity, and actually, you know what? I'll say this: the amount of partners out there that were like us are becoming less and less and less. They're getting bought up by private equity. They're growing up, I guess you might say, but that doesn't mean they're getting better. We're not interested in that, and it's really opening the door to a lot more customer conversations. We met with a couple large customers 2 weeks ago that they don't want to work with the big guys. They don't want to work with the big LARs or SIs because they know what they're going to get. They're super open to these conversations these days. All right. The blog we're going to look at today, the title of it is Unveiling the Power of Citrix Enterprise Browsers, Integration with Citrix Analytics Service for Security. I think, Geremy, I'll come to you first. The browser scenario within the Citrix workspace portfolio, it doesn't seem like people know enough about it.
No, in fact, one of the questions that I usually get when we demo Enterprise Browser off, so let's take a step back. Enterprise Browser is a local browser that is integrated right into the Citrix Workspace app. And when you launch a web link that launches in the Enterprise Browser, it's using a local browser. So you're using the local resources, of that machine. It's not hosted shared, virtual desktop, any of those things, is actually leveraging that local enterprise browser, which, by the way, includes security controls as well. But when I demo this thing off, the first question that usually comes up is, where are you hosting that browser? And I'm like, no, this is not a hosted browser. So, sometimes we're kind of crippled by our own success, Andy, in that folks are so used to things from Citrix being virtual that, it takes a mind shift to sort of think about this from a local perspective. So, to answer your question.
A large corporation a couple weeks ago. I met with the CIO and I'm trying to talk to him about the browser options within Citrix, and he stops me and says, I've been doing Citrix since the late 90s. I know all about publishing a browser in Citrix. And for 5 minutes, I tried to convince him that wasn't what this was, but he was so adamant. He knew it already that this didn't exist. Only the old way exists. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that. If you look at it, the majority of our customers, historical customers especially, the number one app that they would publish out using XenApp was a browser, because they could manage the controls, they could manage the update of that browser, they could put in their own security controls, and they would leverage the XenApp policies that were out there. And they had management reporting, reliability, all that stuff. The problem is that came with a price. And that price was it consumed back-end resources on your servers to be able to deliver that.
Right. Well, and it's not like that doesn't still exist. The use cases are there, but they're minimum these days versus the use cases for what we're talking about here, which is a locally running Chromium iterative or a Chromium version of a browser that's part of the Citrix Workspace app. And Geremy, just to be clear, when I install Citrix Workspace app to get access to this magical Citrix digital workspace that I use, that browser is in there and ready to go.
The bit's already in there and ready to go. You got it.
Bill, are you seeing customers that are starting to understand this, or are they still just as unaware of this solution?
They're largely still unaware. They're still in the mindset of what Todd was mentioning, which is where they publish the browser, and maybe they publish it with a link embedded, so you launch it and you get Salesforce or what have you. But that's kind of the way we used to do it, like Todd was saying. But today, it might still make sense in some cases where you've got a really fat app that needs to run in the data center, and you can't really get to that with a browser outside of the environment. But so many users are remote now, and it really doesn't make sense to publish a browser on a XenApp server just to turn right around and go out to the internet and get to Salesforce, right?
When you say fatness of the app, are you talking about the old school days where you had all these different plugins and things that needed to be there? Is that part of it?
Well, not that necessarily, but just the app being client server oriented. Where you've got a whole database tier and an app tier and all of those, and then the end user tier, those types of, and we don't see that as much maybe in some old insurance industry apps and maybe medical apps. A lot of them are starting to move out of that, or have already moved out of that realm, but there's still some legacy stuff out there, a lot of it.
Well, I mean, Java was a great example of things that where you just need to make sure you controlled all that. So you put it in a virtualized back-end sandbox and then present it versus having it deployed. But HTML5 and the codecs and things that are all part of that capability these days they've kind of mitigated the need for all the control that you used to would have, wouldn't you think?
They absolutely have. But I guess my point here is that most of the apps that folks today are accessing are are SaaS based or web based apps. So it doesn't even make sense. It might have made sense then for security reasons, but it certainly doesn't make sense now to publish a browser so the user launches it in the data center and then it turns right out and goes out to the internet to get to Salesforce.
Yeah.
Why not just do it from the endpoint to Salesforce and then wrap a secure browser around it with controls and limitations on cut paste and other such things, which is what this does. We'll get into it in a minute.
Yeah. Hey, Todd, do you want to tackle this first section after the intro? The title of this section is Navigating the Web, Every URL, Every Move.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges that's been out there historically has been, okay, I've got a URL. I need to be able to lock it down. I need to be able to provide controls customized to that URL or that site, and be able to do things like monitor and control cut and paste, control clipboard functionality, printing capabilities, all of those type of things. And really this enterprise level browser really allows you to have that same level of controls in a browser delivered session that you would normally have with a virtualized app session, right? Because we've been able to take those controls and migrate them over. But not only migrate the controls over, but also migrate the reporting and analysis, the analysis component of it, right? So being able to not only say, hey, we've got these controls, but we can then prove that those controls are actually effective, which anyone who has to deal with compliance programs, that's both sides of the argument there, right? You've got to be able to have the controls, and you've got to be able to prove that those controls are actually working.
I mean, to me, when I dive deeper into this, which I do occasionally, this is like the most powerful new thing that Citrix has had in the last 10 years. What do you think?
And I think under the covers, this is something that a lot of customers have been doing a workaround for the past 15 years, when really this was the end solution that really should have been delivered. I won't say in the first place, but certainly if we could have delivered this a lot sooner, it probably would have been able to alleviate a lot of customers' pains of having to manage browsers. And think about it. How many times do you get an update on your browser that requires you to do a reboot or a relaunch of the browser? I mean, I think, as an example, my Chrome browser, I'm getting an update probably every other day. Something is changing in there. And it could be these subtle changes or it could be big changes. But the thing is, those are things that have to be done. If I can then say, hey, I've got an enterprise browser that is managed, that is controlled, without me having to worry about the updates that are occurring on my local, I can definitely get more control and more security around it, and then also have a better experience.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
While all that true and 100% true, while in parallel not having to produce consumption compute on the back end, which is where a big chunk of the cost kicks in historically.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Bill used the word Salesforce. I mean, Andy, you got Salesforce running now. Salesforce Lightning is a hog, and running that as a published app just consumes a lot of resource on the back end. So, listen, if security was the issue, Bill brings up a good point. I mean, if this is already a SaaS hosted offsite application anyways, now I'm just tying up data center resources for what reason, right? I can secure this app. There are controls in this enterprise browser. I'm offloading the processing to my local machine. Why not? Why not? So the first thing that's
Sorry, real quick. Help me understand the traffic flow in that scenario. I know when I used to bring it as a published app, I knew it came in through presentation and then went in and out through your typical HTTP, HTTPS. In this situation where I'm actually running a browser locally and I'm outside the office, can I force that traffic back in and then back out, back in to get to local resources, directly out, or all the above?
You can do all of the above. So the idea would be, listen, if you want to keep the traffic flow from your endpoint directly to like Salesforce, that's something that can completely be done. If you want to force it through the data center, and there's some use cases for that. So for instance, there are certain SaaS apps that require all the data, all the traffic to originate, like say from a data center. Again, you can also force it through the data center so that traffic from my local machine at my house appears to be going through the data center and out to the SaaS app. So, that's also a supported scenario as well you can configure.
Yeah. Next section talks about
hey, let's go back up. So there's an important point to the first one. So this first section talks about the fact that because you're running this from the local enterprise browser, we're actually logging the URLs that you go to. So for instance, you can publish a link to an app or a link to a website. It will launch in this enterprise browser, which is great. But I can also open up another tab and go navigate to a different website. So where that comes in useful is number one, I like the fact that I'm getting folks used to using it. But secondly, there's a feature that you can enable that will let you understand where these URLs are going. So for instance, you could certainly look at this from a security perspective. Like I don't want folks going to certain websites. But on the flip side, I might understand that my users are actually trying to go to this one website that they can't get to, like they're having to type it in. And it was just something I missed. So now I know a new website that I need to publish to my end users that maybe I didn't realize I needed to before. In fact, there's a feature integrated into this called the app discovery feature that helps you turn that on and figure it out.
Yeah, I think what you would really highlight here, and very much true. We've talked about the local browser running, but it's control of that local browser, and then analytics and insight into everything happening within that browser. Which, when you use maybe the statement I should have made earlier, it's 2023, 2024 almost, and most corporate users of enterprise, commercial, mid-market, SMB, they still use a consumer grade browser to do their job. If you stop and look at it that way, that makes no sense at this stage of the game.
It doesn't. But
Yeah,
like you said, people just don't know.
And the other benefit here is what if IT could become proactive instead of reactive, right? So as Geremy was just saying with the app discovery capabilities, what if you could say, hey, you know what, we're noticing our users are doing more with this website. What if we could then include that, right, as part of our service, or go and understand how to optimize that? Now all of a sudden you're meeting your users' needs before the users actually start complaining about it.
And you can help uncover shadow IT too.
That's exactly it. Yep.
Anything else to cover on this part, Jamie? I'm glad you stopped us, because that's one of the most important parts of this whole blog is the ability to see on the back end what's happening from a security and performance perspective.
Yep. No, that's it. Yeah, we can move on to the next one.
All right, let's talk about this clipboard control, cutting through the risk. Let's cover this. Extremely applicable in this conversation. Geremy, go ahead.
Yeah, so when you think about why customers were publishing applications like web browsers in the past, some of it, to Bill's point, was certainly client server, but some of it was just good old plain security, right? Like they wanted to contain the data. They wanted to keep it in the data center. And so, of course, XenApp, XenDesktop, those are policies you can turn on. Block, copy, and paste, which is kind of what we're getting on here. You can just manage the clipboard. Well, as it turns out, we can extend that same security control out to this enterprise browser that's running on that local machine. So for instance, if I'm within, I've got a web page up on the enterprise browser, I can turn on, maybe this is Salesforce. I can restrict the clipboard even at this local machine, even if it's not hosted.
Am I doing that based on URL? What's my key indicator that says when that turns on and off?
You can do it per URL. So you can have a couple of different URLs. You might have one that's wide open, you couldn't care less about. And then you've got one that might be an internal Jira app that you certainly want to maintain the data on. So you can do it on a per URL basis when you publish the app.
Is that also per tab, or that through the session itself?
It'd be per tab. Yeah. Yes, you can do it per tab.
But the interesting thing about this, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier, Geremy, and I think Andy, you said it as well, is obviously you can create policies to restrict or allow cut, copy, paste, etc. between the browser and the local workstation and vice versa. But the thing I think is really neat about this is that leveraging the security analytics, it's logging all of this activity. So we can see when somebody cut and pasted from Pirate Bay into a workstation, or like try to cut and paste something back and forth between the local workstation into a certain app. And you may not be able to see what they cut and pasted, but at least you can see that it was attempted, and then you can take action on it.
Well, and to take it a step further, so now that we can see, now, first of all, how would you have done this with a XenApp or a XenDesktop or a CVAD, session, right? Now, I might have turned copy and paste off and on, but could I have seen what it is you actually did? And here's the best part is now I can take a policy action based on what you did as well. So not only have I said it, but if I've noticed that, listen, Bill cannot be trusted and he spams Control-C, Control-V. If we see that enough, maybe we just turn off his access, or we take some proactive action. We alert someone to let them know this is what's going on.
Yeah, I think part of the argument you guys are making, in theory, there's elements of this are more controllable, more visible than if we host it in the data center and consumed all those resources, where we may or may not be able to do as much as we can do here.
Yeah, we have more context. We have the ability to get more context into what's going on and can take action on it in real time versus what we could do in the past.
Hey, Todd, anything we missed?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay, let's, Todd, you want to cover printing precision, managing output safely, right? There's the digital that we've been talking about, but analog still happens, and analog's still a major concern, aka printing.
Yep, and this is something that really happened when we started sending people home to work from home. One of the big risk factors out there, whether you're talking about regulated industries like healthcare or banking, where customer service reps or billers are being sent to work from home on a regular basis. And their process was, hey, I'm at the office. I'm just going to print this out and put it into the file. That same process says print it out. Well, you're now at home, right? You shouldn't be printing things. You may or may not be allowed to print copies and keep them at home because it's less secure, or it could be a potential data privacy issue, things like that. So being able to manage where that print output actually occurs and restrict it. And when you connect them through something like a VPN, right? So basically you can say, hey, when you're connected to the VPN, don't allow any downloads or printing or things like that. But oftentimes it's at the application level, right? So this could be the application or the site level where you can actually then turn on the ability to print or turn it off and identify, not only what they're printing, but also where they've printed it to. Right, it could be identified as the printer name, or printing off to a PDF file as an example. Right, so being able to track that, and once again, to Bill's comment, if we can restrict it, we can also report on it. Right, so first time, hey, you know what, you get a notification from your manager saying, hey, you shouldn't have been printed that off. If you're a repeat offender for that, guess what? You're going to have that access turned off, or you may have some type of an easy phone call with your manager and HR rep on the call.
Right. Geremy, any other comments on the printing aspects of what the secure browser brings to this solution?
No. I mean, I think Todd hit it here. Along the same line as this copy and paste. If we can start tracking this, we can be proactive with it as well.
Bill, are you seeing? I think we beat it to death. Customers don't even know this stuff exists, much less using it. Do we have any examples where customers have turned this on in your working set of customers?
No.
Yeah. I think it's just because they don't know. They literally don't know that they've had this function.
It kind of goes back to something I think Geremy alluded to earlier, and that is, we're victims of our success. And I think a lot of customers still see Citrix as to use Mark Templeton term from years ago, one-trick pony, right?
Well, so in my situation with the CIO the other week of this major corporation, that they started the whole conversation with, I know Metaphone and I knew WinApp, therefore you can't tell me anything. And I'm like, oh God, I know where this one's going.
Well, I know which customer that was. Okay. Yep.
Yep. Put me in my place right away.
I was on that call.
Yeah. All right. Geremy, back to you. Download dynamics, tracking every byte. This is where it really gets scary for customers. And that was one of the reasons why we had the published app concept of a published browser. But we don't need to do that anymore, because guess what? We can do it here. Help us understand that.
Yeah. So think about what would happen if you tried to download something from a website that was in your published app. What did it typically download to? It was probably, hopefully your Citrix Session, your Citrix environment was set up correctly so that it would redirect that to a network share, right? But some kind of personal folder, of course. But once you've taken the web browser, quote unquote, off net, and now it sits locally, and I go to download something, and all of a sudden, where's it downloading? It was downloading locally to my machine. So again, this is an area that I might not have considered in the past. In the past, it might have looked like security controls like a Chrome browser just to turn off downloads in general. But now that I'm going to download something and it could potentially be local, can I turn that off as well? And so being able to log, number one, what got downloaded, where it got downloaded, where it was downloaded from, and is that something that I'm even going to allow? Those are security controls that, number one, you can turn on, and second of all, and this is the trend here, I can log and track against and take proactive security, actions against as well. So some of these things, and this is kind of what the next session hits, is, in micro chunks, maybe it doesn't indicate any sort of security threat, but this all feeds into a risk score that tags the user as more or less risky. So, again, in the theme of feeding this into security analytics, yes, we can take proactive actions, but ultimately, what is the posture of the user doing all of these things, or one of these things? Is one thing more important than the other? Like, I might not care about printing, but I care a lot about downloading. Again, these are all things that can be controlled. things that can be logged, and ultimately, I can tag the user as risky and be proactive about it.
Right. Todd, anything else?
I think it's a great lead into the to kind of the last topic here, which is the the whole comments around establishing a risk score. And how so much of our security is based on contextual items, whether it be someone changes their location, what their application they're using,
Advice.
And really kind of identifying what their score is compared to some of their peers and compared to some of the other folks that are out there using these systems, being able to address the needs of the users and also the needs of the security requirements of the organization are critical, right? So being able to say, hey, you know what, this person, this user needs to be able to print. They need to be able to download files. They need to be able to maybe edit some things, and then once they download it, re-upload it. What if I could have something like that reported? Hey, you downloaded something, but you never re-uploaded it. Is that a process issue, or is that something, are you still working on it? There's a variety of different things that we can help manage here. But it really helps us balance out that the user experience versus the security requirements.
And guys, I think this is the right answer here, but you don't necessarily have to turn on a bunch of enforcement, but you can turn this on and start evaluating your risk portfolio just by turning this on without ever enforcing anything.
Correct. Yep. So if you just want to watch and get a feel for what users are doing and just understand, what the activity is. I mean, that's step number one. And then you can create controls after that if you choose to.
So the question to you guys is, if you can do that and it doesn't have to be heavy-handed, why don't you? Why didn't everybody just turn this on, start using it? And the truth is, going back to the comments over, they just don't even know you can do it. They are, I think, the idea that Citrix and the successful idea of publishing a browser, that's how you do it, is almost really been a detriment.
Yep. In fact, what's interesting about this is and you pointed this out, Andy, is you actually get more functionality out of this than you would have just publishing the app with the XenApp session.
I think the other thing that we're seeing is, in the past, we weren't always engaging with the folks that were running the security the security organization within our customers, right? It was very much reactive as opposed to being proactive. And the security folks would tend to go out and say, hey, we just got this report. We just did an investigation. We just read something that says we need to go in and either fix it or buy something new. And oftentimes it's not being done in collaboration with the same folks that are running the Citrix environment. So there's no need there to make a change and to turn some of these features on.
Right.
But if you're a customer and you're listening to this podcast, get to know your security folks. They're not scary. They're there to help you find ways to leverage what you've already made the investment in, or potentially come up with a different way of doing things.
You have the answer right here they're looking for. They just don't know because they're not looking in the Citrix world for the answers. They're going out and trying to find new products that are SASE and zero trust related.
Yep.
Bill, any comments on the whole concept of contextual risk?
No, I agree with the title there. A game changer for sure is the ability to look at the users' behavior and activity and make policy-based decisions on whether they can continue to have that level of access or adjust it. So I really, I knew this existed, but didn't realize it was this extensive at this point. So now I want to go test it. Hopefully folks on the call want to do that too. And if you do, reach out, we can work together.
We've got it turned on within XenTegra. We just don't enforce anything at the moment. Therefore, people just keep doing their own IT,
Right.
Their own IT sneaker net, doing their own thing. But we talked about our management call this morning, turning this on so that in order to get to XenTegra Salesforce, you have to come through our digital workspace. It's a mutual blend of mandating stuff as also getting people to come to it to their own on their own device, their own vice, their own what's it called? Their own reason for want to get to it. What's the word for it? So
the carrot for me is there are quite a few web apps that are only available internal to Citrix. So like our Jira page and some of our internal sites, and for me to launch my virtual desktop or me to launch a virtual lab, don't get me wrong, great use case, but I would much rather do that in my enterprise browser, which is what I tend to do. In fact, I've got bookmarks for most of the stuff inside enterprise browser, and it's quicker, it's easier, simpler, especially if I just need to pop in and pop out.
But Geremy, most of the customers I'm running into today, they're using a local browser, completely unmanaged, and a VPN to get to that back end. And you're like, what year are you living in? That's the 2005. I get it. Not now.
Yeah.
Todd, you shook your head like you see that all the time.
Yeah, I see it a lot more frequently than I thought we would see it, as far as the older method. And part of it is the architecture of some of these applications that are out there, some of these websites that people are hitting, where especially the internal ones, right? So the internal websites tend to have local data sources to that data center or to that organization. But if they're using something like Salesforce or ServiceNow or some other type of commercially available website that's a true software as a service, the architecture is totally different, right? You're not going back to that data center, to your company's data center, to get a lot of this information. It's residing someplace up in the cloud or in someone else's location, or you're pulling in from multiple sources. So that has changed considerably. The architecture has changed to the point where the old way of doing things, as you said, the 2005 way of doing things it's no longer applicable. But it's nice to be able to turn around and say, hey, we can do it now both ways, right? Through this one single enterprise browser that's included in your workspace app, that you've got it already on there, we can address both of those concerns. The traditional legacy websites or the software as a service, new next generation website.
Exactly. In one pane of glass.
Yep.
With the same security controls on all the above. It's amazing. It really is amazing. Yep. And if you need a published desktop, VDI, server base, whatever, hey, that's there too.
Yep.
It really is the most holistic end-to-end digital workspace platform on the planet. All right. Well, guys, I appreciate you jumping on. Maybe we'll do this again next week. I'm not sure. I don't even know when the 25th is. I'm not sure what the schedule is.
It's next Monday.
Next Monday? Okay. Well, I'm going to say we won't do it next Monday. And we'll seeing you guys in 2020.
I think we may need a break from all the chaos that tends to be Christmas morning.
That's true. And just so we're clear,
little-ish kids. Jim, you have little kids, right? Little-ish.
My youngest is 8, so I'll say little, okay. Especially compared to yours. You've got the college kids, and Todd's are married now.
I'm on round 2 of some of these.
Oh, you're circling back. Okay.
Yes. Well, no, I'm not on round 2. I'm on the next generation.
That's what I meant.
No matter what,
just so we're clear, Todd, that's exactly what I meant.
No matter what, don't show up here next Monday. We'll take the day off. But guys, I appreciate it. It's been a great year. A lot of great conversations. Monica's been fantastic to work with. Yeah. Look, we have a lot of great listeners. We don't have enough great listeners, because what we talk about here in the Citrix world is so applicable. And I guarantee you, it's probably 95% or higher of the people don't know what we just talked about, and they're missing the boat.
And all they need to do is get us to whet their appetite.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, guys.
Christmas.